and today I want to talk to you about the key to overcoming procrastination as a sales professional. Now, if you are in sales, you have suffered from procrastination. How do I know this? Because I've suffered from procrastination as a salesperson. Many times you're in independent sales, you have no boss, you have no direct manager, no one to really hold you accountable, and so there's been those times where you knew you needed to make that phone call and you just couldn't quite pick the phone up. You needed to reply to that email, but you just couldn't hit reply. You needed to get out in the field and do some cold calling or get on the phone and cold call, and instead you pulled up Netflix. I've done all of these things. I've suffered from all of these things. And so today I'm going to talk to you about how to overcome procrastination by asking you two questions. Now, the first question is going to determine whether or not you should even be in sales in the first place. The second question is going to identify what type of procrastination you're probably suffering from and how to overcome it. So question number one, are you driven? Are you driven? What does that mean, driven? The idea of driven simply means you're not satisfied with the status quo. You're not satisfied with average. So if you're a person that looks at your life and says, I'm not going to be average, I'm not going to settle for the status quo, I'm going to rise above that and I'm going to make something out of my life, that means you are driven. Now, if you're not driven, you really shouldn't be in sales, definitely not independent sales, because you've got to have that drive and that motivation just to get yourself out there and make the cold calls or go out there in the field. So you have to have that core motivation or drive. I'm going to assume that you're driven. So here's the next question that I have to ask you so we can identify what kind of procrastination you're probably suffering from. What is it that drives you? Most sales professionals are driven by one of two things. They're either driven by pride or by accomplishment. They're either driven by pride or by accomplishment. Now, being driven by pride is the most dangerous one, and quite frankly, it's the one that I hear most on the phone when I'm talking to salespeople. Sales professionals say things to me like, well, I don't want to get out in the field yet because I would look foolish. I don't want to make a fool of myself. Or they say, well, I just want to wait until the marketing platform and all the leads that you do, I want to wait till that catches up because I don't want to get out in the field and prospect. I don't want to get out there and cold call, almost like these are activities that are beneath me. And so that's somebody who's driven by pride. In other words, in your mind, you want to make sure that you're only doing things that are good enough for you to do. You don't want to do things that are beneath you. And I suffer from that. I suffered from that from the very beginning. And that's always something. And here's the main reason why. Most of you who are in independent sales, you came from a very successful background. And so maybe you were selling something else for another company, you worked your way up the ladder, maybe you were even managing a sales team like I was before I got into independent sales. And so I thought, well, good night, I don't need to be out prospecting, walking into businesses, I should just build a big team and I should just try to dominate that way. No, you got to get out in the field and get started. And so if you're suffering from the type of procrastination that says, well, I don't want to look foolish, or, well, that's beneath me, then you're driven a little bit too much by pride, and you're going to have to dial that back a little bit if you want to be successful. Now, what you really want to be driven by is you want to be driven by accomplishment. Now, when you're driven by accomplishment, what that means is that you're going to do whatever you need to do to accomplish the results. Okay? So I can always tell a difference on the phone when I talk to a sales professional. A sales professional driven by pride will tell me things like, well, in my last job, I was okay? Don't tell me what you were, tell me what you accomplished. In my last job, I made this many sales. I was the top salesperson in my company. I sold this. I accomplished these objectives. That's somebody who's driven by accomplishment, not by pride. Notice the difference? They're not talking about what they were, they're talking about what they accomplished. Same thing today. Don't tell me what you are. Don't be so concerned with, well, I want to make sure everybody in my market perceives me as X. No, you need to make sure that you get enough sales in your market to stay in business so you don't have to go back and get the job that you left to come sell for us. So be driven by accomplishment, and what will happen is, as you're driven by accomplishment, you're going to be excited to get out in the field because you know it works. Every single one of you watching this video, if you have that drive and you have that sales background, you know without me even telling you that if you walked into 20 businesses a day, every single day for the next 30 days, you would have a huge month. You'd make more sales than you've ever made before. So why aren't you going to do that? Well, there's only two reasons you're not going to do that. Number one is because you're driven by pride and you feel like somehow that's beneath you, or you feel like, I just don't have enough training yet. Now certainly go through a little bit of training, but you can only learn so much through a video and training. You got to get out in the field and try it, just like your last job. You probably were a little bit feeling awkward when you got on the phone the first day, but maybe you had a manager standing right over your shoulder saying, make these calls. And so you had to make a fool of yourself to get over that hump to become the expert. Well, now you don't have anybody over your shoulder doing that. So you have to kind of swallow your pride a little bit and say, you know what? I'm going to go make 10 contacts or 100 contacts no matter what they say. I'm just going to get it over with. And I'm going to move on and become the expert at this. The second reason you might not go out to 20 prospects is there is a danger when you're driven by accomplishment. You can also procrastinate there. Let me explain why. Many people who are driven by accomplishment set unrealistic expectations for themselves, and they feel like they just can't get started because they can't accomplish those objectives. I'll give you an example. I've talked to brand new salespeople even this week that have said, this is my very first week, I'm going to get 5 sales this week. Well, maybe you will, but you probably won't. And either way, that's not a good goal for you to set when you're getting started, because what's going to happen is it's such a big goal. You know, it's like cleaning out the garage. You ever have that feeling? You open up your garage, you're like, today I'm going to clean out the garage. And you open the door and you're like, oh man, no, I'm not cleaning out the garage. This is going to take me a week. Why? It's too big of a job. It's like I can't even get started. You got to get started. You got to pick up that first box and get it out of there. Otherwise, you're never going to finish. And what happens in sales is we set these huge goals for ourselves, and it's like, you're not going to achieve that. And whether or not you do, it's going to make you procrastinate because you set too big of a goal. Try this goal out, okay? Make your goal today, I'm going to walk into 10 businesses. That's it. Regardless of what happens, regardless of who I talk to or what they say, I'm going to walk into 10 businesses. Tomorrow, I'm going to walk into 20. Another good goal is I'm going to talk to 100 qualified prospects in the next 30 days. I'm going to talk to 100 qualified prospects in the next 30 days. They might buy, they might tell me to get out of their store, whatever, doesn't matter. My goal is I'm going to talk to 100 qualified prospects. So if you're somebody that says, I'm not suffering from pride, I have no problem getting out in the field, that's not beneath me, okay, then the reason you're not out in the field is probably because you've set this huge goal for yourself and it's so big and scary that you can't even get started. Break it down and make yourself a small goal that you can accomplish.